Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Security Space podcast. Today, I'm joined by Callum Kerr, and it is another installment of the Boots to Boardroom series. And this time, we'll be focusing on how to make intelligence actionable. That very much is a hot topic at the moment with a lot of people that I'm speaking to at the moment. They're specifically working in CTI, but it's very relevant to all areas of security, and it is how we can evolve as anything does evolve in life, in security. How can we start making this threat intelligence that we are aware of and actually being proactive with it? And the thesis of today's pod with Callum is how we can kind of draw parallels between his previous life in the military and now his current life in the commercial world, and how we can kind of use the threat intelligence practices of making intelligence actionable in the military and how he's bringing that over. So, bit of a mouthful of an introduction, but to kind of get into it, then Callum, take us back to just before you're about to get into the military. Then, where was your mindset at as a younger Callum Kerr? Were you kind of getting into the military to go see the world, or was it? Do you have family members in it? Why did you join the mill back then, mate?
Yeah, I think that's a while ago now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've got family in the military, so I grew up on stories of the military, and that kind of it's in your blood almost, isn't it? I think when you've got family who are in that kind of that line of work. So I think I always knew I was going to end up in the military in one form or another, whether that was going to be the RAF at one point, or the army. I don't know. As it happened, I ended up in the army. It wasn't for a few years until after school. I was working from, pot washing or, various jobs you have as a teenager, right? And left school and did what most teenagers do, which is procrastinate a lot and jot about the place. But I think that's quite good in a way because, you get an experience of, going out as working for, various small businesses around where I grew up, etc. Yeah, and great experiences, great to meet different people and do different things. But yeah, eventually bit the bullet, so to speak, stopped procrastinating and got on with it, and signed up back in 2011, I think it was, when I first went into the AFCOs. It was then, and yeah, said I want to join up, and took about a year and a half between losing paperwork and doing various tests and whatnot. But yeah, started then 2013 with the intelligence course, so basic training through to phase two then.
Okay. And why Intel then? What drew you to that?
There used to be this job role finder on the British Army website, and you put in things that you might want to do. And growing up on various war stories and tales of, like, adventures in the military, I was like, wow, I want something with a combat icon. I want to be out there, doing what stereotypical what you think the army's doing. But I also had my parents in my ear going, "You need to pick a trade. You need something to fall back on. So you must do something like that." So I was like, and the intelligence corps popped up on the top, and I was like, it said operator military intelligence. I thought, well, that sounds cool, and it's
Yeah.
got a few icons there. It's a trade. I can sell that to my parents. They're probably okay with it, and it sounds like an adventure. So it was really from that started me getting interested into it, and then the more I read into it, there's various forums online. You sort of like look for info, doing that collection piece, I suppose, if I call it now. I was going to try and spin it a little bit. But you're looking into things a bit more, and you're like, yeah, this sounds really good. This sounds really interesting. You're all over the place, new problems, new people, um, and great opportunities that I'd never have the opportunity to do anything like that in my current world.
Yeah.
So yeah, why not give it a go? And yeah, luckily they took me on.
Yeah, nice. No, it's always really interesting to hear people's stories then. And so obviously it very much was sort of like external motivations sort of moving into intelligence. It was just kind of like, yeah, I want to get into the army but don't know specifically what role. Intel came along, it fit the bill. So progresses then. So take us through the first few years you work in intelligence, you're starting to specialize now. Was it initially geopol at the start? Was it a bit more strategic? Was it, I assume, at this moment in time, just threat intelligence? Cyber isn't even a thing at this moment in time. Take me through them first few years when you're starting to specialize now then.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a concept of what cyber threat intelligence was then. I don't think it was really,
No.
this is going back, what, 14 years now. It wasn't really a big thing, was it? Um, yeah, I mean, when I was going through training, and I was just, thinking about, one foot in front of the other at that point, get through basic training, get through phase two. I mean, trade training, it was a great experience. I think it's the first time I failed at something that I wanted to achieve, because you
Okay.
started going through various tests, and it wasn't what I expected phase two. I think if you speak to a lot of Int Corps who've gone through, they'd probably say the same. That the first day you do, I think it starts on a Sunday, and it's here's some newspaper articles. Write these in JSP 101 defense format writing. You're like, well, this isn't what I expected. This is really boring, but it's teaching those fundamentals that you draw on consistently through.
Yeah.
So yeah, that started phase two for me. And I was like, this isn't quite what I expected. It's interesting. It's great. Not what I thought it'd be. And also, some of the tests and some of the things you do. I started to fail at, and I was like, if this is something I really want, and this is the first time. So it was a challenge for me personally. And other than the trade training, one of the big things I learned from phase two was not to hold on to what happened yesterday. If you've had a stumble or you've not quite met something, that's fine. Learn from it, move on, and attack it. Tap the retest or tap the
Yeah.
next thing that's coming along. So that's a big thing I learned from phase two, which I was really grateful for because I've applied that, throughout. It's a great lesson to learn. I think everyone learns it at some point, whether you do university or you do an arduous, you're running a marathon or training for something. I think everyone comes up against something like that at some point. So that was my point where I learned that. But yeah, from there I went straight into unit West of Wales, and yeah, just got fully immersed into army life there, and yeah, just you're brand new into this completely different world, right? The military is a completely different place, culture, um, and it's just getting immersed into that really. But it's a great place to meet people from multiple walks of life,
Yeah.
multiple perspectives, and some really brilliant people. And you start meeting them and being exposed to different challenges and environments, and yeah, that was really great. So yeah, so did that for a couple of years. Moved on to another post, and this is all sort of like general intelligence support to operations or to a generalist, what we'd call a generalist intelligence analyst.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got exposed to some, I suppose, cyber threat intelligence or cyber reporting. I thought, well, this is cool. This is really, really good stuff. This is really insightful. This is kind of the reporting that you think before you join up, but this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this is great. So I started looking into it a bit more. And just at that time, the army was starting to establish more formally their threat intelligence capabilities and their cyber capabilities.
And
So
just
an opportunity.
timestamp me this, Callum. What
Oh,
year are we talking now?
this is about 2016, I
Okay.
think.
Okay.
They're about 2016, 2017. And so I'm starting to think about threat intelligence now at this point in cyber. Um, and yeah, applied for they had a board process and I applied for that. Luckily, got through that and I selected to be able to join a cyber team and joined them. And yeah, that's sort of took me through the next 4 years till eventually when I left.
Okay. So before we do take up to when you left, you've obviously moved from threat intelligence into cyber threat intelligence now. Was it similar? Was it quite a similar way of doing it? Because it was still an emerging technology, even like we're talking 10 years ago now. A lot of people might have back then been like, "God, this is like the Matrix, cyber threat intelligence. This is what I perceived it to be." Like you, like to paraphrase your own words. What was it? Was it a hop, skip, and a jump, or was it chalk and cheese? What are we saying here?
I think there's multiple disciplines of intelligence out there, but it's all underpinned by the same concept or the same sort of threat framework, and that is, intent, opportunity, capability. And that's what you're judging all threats by, whether you're looking at, an adversary, terrorist group or insurgent group, have they got the capability to launch an attack against us? Do they have the intent? Is the opportunity there? And you're judging the threat on that. And it's the same for cyber threat intelligence. You're judging threat actors or, whoever it might be, your digital adversary. And you're looking at it. Do they have the capability? Do they have the malware? Do they have the intent? Do they want to go after us? Do they have the opportunity? Do we have a weakness in our enterprise that they can then, so you're judging it all in the same way. So whilst the discipline changes, the
Yeah.
concepts and how you measure and how you assess and the language you use, your probability language, it's all, very, very similar. So it's just refocusing or repivoting, I suppose, changing your focus. That's
Mm.
how I view it anyway. And I think that's, the fundamentals of intelligence work. You can't really go too wrong.
Yeah. And that's what they were sort of doing in them earlier years, weren't they? They were just giving you the foundations, they were building you, and that's what, like you say, I spoke to a lot of people in this Boots to Boardroom series, and like you say, they're really methodical in terms of building people up progressively and exposing you to different areas to kind of, yeah, build up your skill set more than anything. Um, Did you ever, when did the technical aspect start coming into it then? When did you actually start to get like hands-on keyboard? And to caveat that, were you technical previous to the military?
I think a long time ago, I was a little bit. So I had a family member who started off making databases for the military, and this is back in the day of like Microsoft Access, so like really rudimentary databases. Um, and for some reason, I loved it. Just it was great. Create these databases, and I was creating random things and starting to learn VBA. Um, and they were helping me along, and I was asking questions. But one day, they just gave me this big manual of this Microsoft Access, thick binded thing. I started like going through that, and I can do this and whatever else. So there's always been that sort of technical interest, and a few of the roles that I've done through my military journey have touched into technical opportunities, which has been great. Really, it started going when I got to that first cyber unit. And there were great training opportunities surrounded by, really technically capable people that kind of set that bar, and you can look to them and go, okay, what do I need to achieve? Okay, I need to be kind of here. And there's some great people there that were just, plowing on with, I'm going to develop my skill set and push, push, push. And
Yeah,
that was a great role model to look at and go, okay, I need to do more. So it really started there. But I think it was at that point as well that the the interest in education came back for me as well. It was because cyber, it's constantly changing. So you're constantly having to study, learn, read about the new thing every morning. I think all TI analysts are there looking at going, okay, what's happening? What's the reporting saying, etc., etc. So you've got to have this mindset of constantly learning and constantly developing. I think, it started back then, and it's still carrying on now with technical development. So I don't think I'll ever be there. Nothing's ever 100% because it's constantly changing, but it's the appetite's definitely started about then and is carrying on.
fantastic. And that in itself is the mindset that I think is what is needed for somebody in your role. And I just wanted to kind of put you on the spot a little bit and be like, why? Why are you constantly like pulling up the latest TLDR in terms of like what's going on with the latest sort of breaches, latest zero trusts in terms of like because you're absolutely right, it's constantly evolving and by the day. So I think I understand the answers to where you're going this, but I wanted to see if you could tell the audience why do you constantly have to be looking at the latest threats and being sort of at the forefront to stay current more than anything? What's the reason for that, Callum?
I think it's expected of us in that intelligence role, to be quite honest, as one of the main bits. You, whether it's in the military, your commander, or your senior leaders within the private sector or corporate, they've got so many other focuses, and they're balancing or spinning multiple plates. I think it's an intelligence responsibility to be looking at that bigger picture and looking forward and going, okay, what's happening next? What should we be thinking about that's coming down the line? And then taking it a step further and making it relevant, making the so what or turning threat one to threat two,
Mm.
going, okay, well, how do we stand up against this threat? What do we need to do in order to make sure that we're protected, we can meet it, or we can, take the opportunities that are coming down further down the line. And intelligence is a great place to do that. I think we're the best equipped out of most disciplines or department sectors, whatever you want to call it. I
Mm.
think we're most best equipped to be looking forward and taking those lessons and saying, hey, this is interesting, we should be taking note of this. But also, it's moving so quickly, we're quickly going to become irrelevant, right? If you're not keeping pace and you're not understanding what's going on, because the threat actors, they've got to focus on being technically excellent and adapting and driving their capability forward to get around the defences that are coming into play, that we need to keep pace with that and understand that.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with your point, and it's precedent that the information is it's kind of like a currency, isn't it? The way I see it, and it's the most fickle currency out there because by the day, the information that you had yesterday might not be as valuable as what it was 2 days ago. Do you know what I mean? It is constantly moving, and that's why you need to be at the forefront and constantly assessing it. And I speak to a lot of people around sort of the difference between information and intelligence because there is a lot of noise out there, so much noise, but what is actually relevant? And it's all about like that prioritization matrix. Yes, we can kind of have a look into when we're looking at vulnerabilities. The CBSS score is a good sort of it's a good start point, I would say, but it's not the be all and end all because a lot of interpretation needs to come into it as well, and that's where people like yourself, the humans, can actually put a bit of analysis to it, and bring in a bit of business context as well. And I suppose that's where I want to start taking us, Callum, in the sense of how do you start making intelligence a little bit more actionable in this world? Do you think that because you've been in the military setting on the front line where intelligence is people's lives, people's livelihoods, or it's the complete a task that is around sort of humanitarian activities. So it's like people are involved. Um, is that the mindset that you bring over to the corporate world, where it's like, look, just because it's not necessarily completing a task, yes, it might be securing assets of a company. Have you just brought that over, or have I just framed that horrifically, and you have a completely different way of looking at things?
No, I think that's a great point. I liked your point there, or the analogy on the currency as well. I think that's a really, really good way of framing it because, yeah, we definitely operate with a, if you call it an intelligence currency and the way we do things. It's really important for us that we make sure that our consumers, whether that's board or tactical defenders, whoever else are trading in that currency that we're putting out there. And if we're not, then we need to perhaps change our currency. We need to make sure that what we're outputting, the way we're outputting it, and communicating with people can be received. Because I think that's something we can get really stuck into in the intelligence world is that we become you know, a self-fulfilling, we love our own assessment. We love delving into things by the nature of great analysts, research and deep diving things. We just got to make sure that what we produce at the end of it, people are willing to or capable of getting a hold of and spending if it's if we're using the currency analogy. But yeah, on your other point there, sorry, I love that currency bit. That's great. The I had a great bit of advice when I was moving from the military to corporate, and that was, to in the military, it's all about operations, operational success and our focus on delivering operations, etc., etc. And it's a great mindset to have. And people sometimes get caught up when they leave the military of it's a complete mindset shift. And it is and it isn't. You've just got to think that, the military is all about, committing operations, getting people to a location, and, logistics, medical, intelligence, all of these things combining to deliver this. It's just when you're looking at it in corporate, in civvy streets might call it, it's just a slight shift in that it's still operational. It's just that priorities are slightly different. So it
Yeah.
might not be, it's not, certainly not, making sure there's med provision in a far off place and logistic chains that exist. Well, it could be, if you're looking at, you know, big logistic firms, et cetera, and, moving stuff, across continents. Um, it's just shifting and understanding what the business objectives are, and then changing or tailoring your mindset from, we're going to a conflict zone to we need to achieve business objective X, Y, Z. It's
Yeah.
just that slight shift, that sort of change of a needle. And I think another thing as well that it really comes across from military is called commander's intent. So when commanders are delivering orders or deciding on what we need to do, there's often an intent piece. I intend to achieve or I intend to do X, Y, Z, and that's a mindset that or something that I think military are brought up on to understand and interpret orders as they come down the chain. And if you apply that to to corporate, to the private sector, it's a great uh, well, how do you call it? It's a great edge for ex-military to understand what it is the senior leader's trying to achieve, not necessarily what, because they might be very explicit and say, I want X, Y, Z, and it's like, okay, what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve? And I suppose that understanding the bigger picture, because then when you understand what they're trying to achieve, okay, as yes for me, I can say that I know you want to achieve this. Maybe with the resources that we have and my perspective, you could do this instead, and it will achieve your intent better. So that's another thing I think is a great thing that comes across from the military is intent and understanding that in the bigger picture.
Nice. And how is the corporate world far behind the military in terms of making this intelligence actionable? Like when you moved over into City Street, we were like, oh wow, okay, this is very different how we do things. Yes, the job is the same, but it's quite different. Or were you like, oh no, it's similar. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's similar but different, which is
Okay,
a really terrible answer.
go on,
Um,
elaborate for me then.
there's there's different focuses within corporate intelligence. So a big example is brand impersonation, not something so much on. I'm sure that there's someone somewhere within the MOD looking at perhaps army brand impersonation of the brand, etc. But for those doing sort of cyber defense of military units, etc., not too concerned about the brand impersonation piece, or it's not as a priority focus. So there's different things that each are looking at. I think on the way the military consumes intelligence, it's just been around for so long.
Mm,
It's been around ages, ages, ages. Um, so it's almost baked into the process. And I was talking about commander's intent there a minute ago and how the planning process, 7 questions, which will give any ex-military listeners a shudder. Um, but intelligence is at the forefront of that. Question one, what is the situation? How does it affect me? It's from the get-go, it's in that process of making decisions and making plans, and then it's incorporated throughout. Does the corporate world do that? I think some places do it probably more than others. Um, I think it's still quite new though as well. Threat intelligence has been around for a little while with I think Mandiant's APT report that came out quite a while ago, and they've arguably kick-started it all. But as a main you know as a capability, it's probably last 20 years, 10 years. It's relatively new, right? So I think business is still understanding how they can use intelligence, because I think a lot of the time that questions come through is, oh well, what can you do for me? And a large part of intelligence or being an intelligence lead is educating others within the business of what is our capability, what is our value proposition, what can we offer, what can we do?
mm.
And then it's okay, linking things together and going, okay, you can do this for me, or you could perhaps lean into this bit. It's like, yeah, great. So there's that aspect as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting when how mindsets sort of change through the different sort of organizations that you're in, this is not a podcast in which we're going to get in terms of the oh yeah, we need to execute into the boardroom and we need to win the hearts and minds of the company. That's not that. That's been done a lot. But what I want to sort of ask you, Callum, is a little bit in the sense of like, do you ever get sort of frustrated in the sense of like you might have been doing some threat profiling or whatever it might be? You might have been building this really large case and got this really in-depth sort of you've done your job to the nth degree and it is fantastic sort of bit of information, intelligence that is ready to be actioned. But where your organization is because your job is done, and it's same with the military because I've got a lot of sort of colleagues that have also worked in the military. Once that case is done and you hand it off, it's your job is done, and it's like it's away now, and it's someone else's job to escalate it. Is it the same in the corporate setting? And can that be kind of like a bit frustrating that you can't see the fruits of your labor, or are you like, no, I've done my job, on to the next? What's your view on that?
I think you've hit on something there. It's a pain point for a lot of TI teams. It's like you've done this before, Nick. The, yeah, I think in the corporate world there's this aspect of demonstrating value, and so to simply produce an assessment or analysis and go, yep, send, gone, I've forgotten about it. There has to be an element of follow up, and that serves like multiple purposes and benefits. Like you're going to be if you follow up, you're ensuring that it's being actioned, that follow-on actions have been taken from that. You understand what impact that might have had on the business, and then in turn you can sort of draw value from that and go, hey, look, we've informed this. This has happened as a result of this or X, Y, Z. So there's that element of it as well. But also, and I think but you were kind of getting to there as well was, what if you produce, you pour your heart and soul into an assessment, it goes out and then nothing happens with it. It's like, wow, I'm really frustrated. I'm really fed up with that. Or actually, doing the follow up and finding feedback and drawing that out to go, okay, well, it wasn't exactly what we were after. We were after this, or we didn't quite understand because it wasn't communicating the same way. Going back to your currency analogy, so we can push that back into, if we're doing intelligence cycle and going back round to feedback and pushing that back into direction, we can go, okay, well, we need to tweak this. We need to make sure that this is consumable and this is right so that it can be actioned. And then next time round, okay, yeah, it's hitting the mark. It's now being used. And so, yeah, less frustrating.
Yeah.
So there's a definite aspect of that as well.
Okay, really interesting. Pretty much just got one last question for you, Callum, and I might be putting you on the spot here a little bit. So whether this makes the final cut or not, we'll have to see. But essentially, kind of what I've been doing in the last sort of few weeks, I've been asking anybody that comes onto the Scoot space, if you was to choose your security five-a-side team, and I will put a caveat into there that it can't be people that you're currently working with. who would you kind of basically bring onto your security vibe if you would start a company tomorrow? And it could be anyone, it could be engineers, it could be GRC, it could be sales, it could be anyone that you've come across. So it doesn't even have to be necessarily purely technical cyber. It's just like I say, going back to your military days. But I mean, obviously they've got to work in a security company, so it would have to they need to know a little bit about it. Basically, who would you like to give a shout out to? You're like, I've come across you in my career, and I think you're absolutely fantastic. Anybody jump into mind, Callum?
Oh, that's a hard question. There's so many good people, right? Um, there's a lot of people still in, so I can't. I'm not going to name them and dox them. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a wide range of people.
How long have you been out of the mill, Callum?
Well, that's a good question. 2 years now? Two,
Oh, so
three years?
not too long then. So I
Not too long.
appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, you might actually not be able to say too many people. So, do you know what? I'm not going to put you in hot water. I'll let you.
That is a good one. But it's a good question. I mean, types of people you're looking for, right? Technical excellence is, definitely up there. The adversary is technically excellent. Threat actors are just driving forward. So you need to match that. You need people who are technically minded and looking to push the boundaries. There's a great piece, you know, uh, James Vowles F1. So I will name someone. Completely unrelated to cyber, but there's a podcast he was talking about, pushing boundaries. And actually, if you look back in 5 years' time, you look at the boundaries you're pushing now and go, well, they weren't actually the boundary at all. There was so much more we could have pushed. So I think, find people who are willing to do that and push, push, push. And then as a leader, you've got to be there to, support. And if it goes a little bit wrong, goes over the edge a little bit, be there to catch
Mm,
and take it on. So that's really important. And the old analogy of find a person who's not lazy. I don't want to use a lazy word, but will find the easiest way to do something.
I know what you
Cost
mean. Yeah,
efficiencies, if you want to
yeah,
call it that.
yeah.
Um, so having someone on the team who can just cut through the noise and go, well, do we actually really need to do that? Is there a better way? Automation is king ultimately, isn't it? That's the way you're gonna win things and improve efficiencies. So yeah, someone of that kind of bent, I suppose. And yeah, nothing survives without a bit of marketing, good sales, good interaction, good networking. So you're gonna have to have some players there that are pulling the strings and doing what they do there really well, which yeah, some people do extremely well. So
Mm.
I think that's probably what I look like in types of people,
Yeah.
if that
No,
helps.
you Colin, you did really, really well to be fair. Like
If that goes the
I
cut.
no, do you know what? Like a little peek behind the curtain for the audiences. Normally I give you a couple of days notice on that question, but to be honest with you, Colin, because we had quite a fast turnaround from meetings getting you on the pod. I didn't actually, so I genuinely put you on the spot with that one, and I think you've answered it absolutely fantastically. And that pretty much brings us to our time. So if anybody has got any questions for Callum, either about his journey in the mill, if you're from ex-mill yourself and transition to CTI, and agree or disagree with what Callum said today, then get involved in the comments. But yes, as usual, I'll be sure to put Callum's information down below. And once again, Callum, thanks for coming on the Scoot Space podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me, Nick. Really appreciate it.